Don't touch it! I said don't touch it! Lorelei Stratton's voice was a shard of ice, slicing through the cavernous quiet of the marble lobby. Her command froze the two security guards in their tracks, their hands hovering uselessly over the chaotic tower of pencils, binders, and water bottles that teetered in the center of the atrium. Kian Holloway paused, his push broom held tight in his grip. He was supposed to be invisible, a ghost in a gray uniform who erased the day's smudges after the titans of architecture had gone home. But the scene before him was impossible to ignore. At the base of the precarious structure, a small girl with a storm of dark hair sat cross-legged on the floor. Her name was Anya. Kian knew that much. He'd seen her before, a silent shadow trailing her mother through these hallowed halls. Tonight, she was the epicenter of a hurricane. Her face was a blank canvas, but her small hands were clenched in her lap, her knuckles white. She wasn't crying. She wasn't screaming. She was just holding on. Lorelei, the firm's legendary CEO, was a different story. Her tailored blazer was rumpled, her face pale with a fury that was barely masking sheer panic. "Get her out of here," she hissed into her phone, turning away from her daughter. "Where is her driver? I told him 10 o'clock. The structure wobbled. A stack of marketing pamphlets slid from the top, fluttering to the floor like wounded birds. Anya flinched, a tiny, almost imperceptible tremor that shot straight to Kian's chest. He saw it all in a flash. The opposing angles, the mismatched weights, the critical lack of a stable base. The whole thing was a breath away from collapse. One of the guards, a young guy named Sal, took a hesitant step forward. "Ma'am, we have to clear this. It's a hazard." "I'm aware it's a hazard," Lorelei snapped, her voice dripping with the kind of condescension that could curdle milk. "Just be careful." Kian watched Sal reach for a heavy portfolio that was serving as a load-bearing wall near the bottom. He saw the shift in balance before it happened. He saw the slight tremble that ran up the tower like a nerve impulse. He didn't think. He moved. "Wait." His voice was quiet, but it cut through the tension like a saw through soft wood. Everyone turned to look at him. The janitor. Lorelei's eyes narrowed. A silent, ice-cold query. "Who are you to speak?" Kian ignored her. He walked slowly, deliberately, toward the chaotic monument. He didn't look at Anya. He didn't look at the guards. His eyes were fixed on the structure, reading its story of stress and strain. "If you pull that," he said to Sal, his voice low and even, "the whole thing goes." Sal froze, his hand an inch from the portfolio. "And you are?" Lorelei's words were clipped, each one a perfectly sharpened point. Kian didn't answer her directly. He circled the tower once, his gaze analytical. His gaze landed on a heavy, forgotten paperweight, a miniature bronze replica of the firm's first skyscraper, sitting on the edge of the reception desk. He picked it up. It was solid, dense, a perfect anchor. He knelt, his worn work pants crinkling on the polished marble. He was now on Anya's level, though he still didn't look at her. He could feel her watching him, her small presence a tightly wound coil of energy. With a slow, steady hand, he reached into the heart of the chaos and slid the bronze paperweight into a small gap near the base, directly under the most unstable column of books. There was a soft groan of shifting weight. A single pencil rolled off the top and clattered onto the floor. And then, silence. The tower stood perfectly still, stable, secure. Kian sat back on his heels, his work done. Only then did he allow his eyes to meet Anya's. She stared at him, her dark eyes wide and unblinking. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. A silent acknowledgement. "I see it. I understand." For the first time that night, the tension in Anya's small shoulders seemed to release, just a fraction. "Sal, take a break," Lorelei said, her voice strangely hollow. She dismissed the other guard with a wave of her hand. When they were gone, she was left alone in the vast, silent lobby with her daughter and the janitor who had just performed a minor miracle. She walked toward Kian, her heels clicking an aggressive rhythm on the floor. He stood slowly, wiping his hands on his pants. "What was that?" she demanded. "It was going to fall," Kian said simply. "I know that. I mean what you did. How did you know?" She gestured vaguely at the now stable structure. "Everything has a foundation," he replied, his gaze calm. "Even chaos." Lorelei stared at him, truly seeing him for the first time. Not as part of the building's maintenance staff, but as a man. He was tall, lean, with lines of exhaustion etched around his eyes that couldn't hide an underlying intelligence. There was a quiet competence about him that was utterly at odds with his profession. "I want you to work for me," she said, the words coming out before she'd fully formed them. Kian blinked. "I already do, ma'am. Number not for the firm, for her." She nodded toward Anya, who was now tracing the lines of the bronze paperweight with one small finger. "I'll pay you whatever you want. Double your salary, triple it. Just do that again." Kian's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. A flicker of an old hurt, quickly shuddered. "She doesn't need a janitor, Ms. Stratton, and I don't need a new job." "Everyone needs a new job for the right price," Lorelei countered, falling back on the one language she knew always worked. "Not everyone," Kian said, and the quiet finality in his voice stopped her cold. He looked from Lorelei's impeccably styled hair and diamond earrings to her daughter, who was lost in her own silent world. He saw the chasm between them, a canyon of misunderstanding and fear. He let out a slow breath. "I'll make you a deal." Lorelei's eyebrows shot up. The janitor was negotiating with her. "I won't take your money," he said. "I'll spend time with her. I'll see if I can help, but if I do, if she starts to find her way back, you have to do something for me." Lorelei's posture was rigid, a mask of corporate steel. "And what is it you want? A promotion? A stake in the company?" Kian almost smiled. The idea was so absurd. "No," he said, his voice soft but firm. He looked around the lobby, at the towering walls and the priceless art, a temple built to celebrate one woman's ambition. "You have to build something else," he said. "You'll use your name, your money, your influence. You'll create a foundation, a place for kids like her, kids who think in shapes and structures instead of words, a place that doesn't try to fix them, but gives them the tools to build. You'll call it the Anya Stratton Initiative." Lorelei was speechless. The sheer audacity of his proposal left her breathless. He wasn't asking for a handout. He was demanding a legacy. He was asking her to wager millions on the hope that he could reach a child no one else could. It was insane. It was illogical. It was the only offer that had made any sense all night. She looked at her daughter, who had now picked up the fallen pencil and was carefully placing it back on top of the tower, her touch gentle, intentional. "All right," Lorelei heard herself say, the word feeling foreign on her tongue. "You have a deal, Mr. Holloway," he supplied. "Kian Holloway." "All right, Mr. Holloway," she repeated, a strange new current running through her veins. It wasn't control. It wasn't power. It felt terrifyingly like hope. "Let's see if you can build." The penthouse felt less like a home and more like a final rendering. It was a world of sharp angles, polished concrete floors, and vast panes of glass that framed the city skyline like a cold, untouchable masterpiece. There were no photographs on the white walls, no clutter on the counters, no sense that anyone actually lived here. It was a space designed to be looked at, not felt. Kian stood in the entryway, a canvas tote bag slung over his shoulder. His son, Cody, held his hand, his small sneakers looking like an act of rebellion against the pristine floor. "Wow," Cody whispered, his voice echoing in the grand silence. "Does anyone ever spill anything here?" Kian squeezed his hand. "Let's try not to be the first." Lorelei appeared from a hallway, already dressed in a severe charcoal gray dress that seemed to absorb the light. Her arms were crossed, her default posture of defense. She barely glanced at Cody. "She's in her room," she said to Kian, her tone clipped and efficient. "Down the hall. The door's open." Kian nodded, then crouched to meet his son's eyes. "You okay to hang out here for a bit, bud? I brought your sketchbook." Cody nodded, his gaze darting around the enormous living area. "Is this the girl's house? The one who builds things?" "The very one," Kian said with a soft smile. "Is she sad?" "I think," Kian answered carefully, "she's just quiet. And sometimes quiet feels like sad to people who aren't." Cody seemed to consider this with the solemn gravity only a 7-year-old can muster. "Okay, I'll be quiet too." He found a corner near the giant window and pulled out his sketchbook and a roll of colored pencils. Immediately absorbed. Lorelei watched the exchange, her expression unreadable. "He's compliant. He's considerate," Kian corrected gently, leaving the word to hang in the air between them. He walked down the hall without waiting for her permission. Anya's room was just as sterile as the rest of the penthouse, only populated by toys that were lined up on shelves with the precision of a museum exhibit. They didn't look played with. They looked curated. Anya herself was in the far corner, a small island in an ocean of white carpet. She was surrounded by a fortress of books, stacked spine outward in a defensive circle. Inside it, she was meticulously arranging a set of silver pens into a complex star-like pattern. Kian didn't speak. He didn't want to be another adult voice telling her what to do, asking what was wrong. He slid the tote bag from his shoulder and sat on the floor, a good 15 feet away from her book fortress. From the bag, he carefully unpacked his own building materials. Not toys, but tools. Smooth, hand-sanded blocks of maple and walnut. A set of perfectly weighted brass dowels. A roll of soft leather cord. He began to build. Nothing complicated. He placed one long flat block on the floor, then another perpendicular to it. He laid a single brass dowel across them, finding the perfect point of balance. His movements were slow, deliberate, full of a quiet reverence for the materials. It was a language he hadn't spoken in years, but his hands remembered the grammar. Lorelei watched from the doorway, a storm of impatience brewing behind her cool facade. This was it? This was his grand plan, to play with blocks? She'd paid neurologists from Switzerland and behavioral therapists from Stanford who came with charts and diagnostic manuals. This janitor brought a bag of wood scraps. After 10 minutes of silence, broken only by the soft click of wood on wood, she couldn't stand it anymore. She strode into the room. "Is this it?" she whispered harshly, so Anya wouldn't hear. "How is this helping?" Kian didn't look up from his work. He was trying to balance a small, square block on the end of a dowel. "You can't command a foundation to be strong, Miss Maisie Stratton," he said, his voice as calm as his hands. "You have to lay it piece by piece. You have to invite it to hold the weight. I'm not paying you in metaphors," she shot back, her voice tight with frustration. "I need to see results." "No," he said, finally looking at her. His gaze was clear and steady. "You agreed to build a foundation. This is what it looks like. It's slow, it's quiet, and it's not about results, it's about trust." He turned his attention back to his structure. Lorelei stood there, arms crossed, feeling the unfamiliar sting of being dismissed. She was a woman who moved markets with a single phone call, and he was telling her to be patient. From the living room, they heard a small giggle. Cody had finished his drawing and, growing curious, had padded silently to the doorway of Anya's room. He saw his dad on the floor, building. Without a word, he came in, sat a few feet away from his dad, and picked up a handful of the smaller maple blocks. He started his own project. A simple square house with a wobbly tower. He hummed softly as he worked. A tuneless, happy sound. And that's what did it. Anya's head lifted from her pen star. Her eyes, which had been laser-focused on her own creation, shifted. She watched Cody. She watched his small, clumsy hands stack the blocks. She watched him when one of his towers fell, and he simply laughed and started again. There was no pressure, no expectation. just the simple joy of making something. Her gaze flickered from Cody to Kian. She saw his large, capable hands place a block with an unnerving stillness. She saw the perfect balance in his creation, a miniature echo of the thing she had made in the lobby. He understood. Slowly, as if moving through water, Anya pushed one of the books from her fortress aside, creating a small gap in her wall. Lorelei held her breath. It was the first time she'd seen Anya willingly dismantle one of her own barriers. Kian didn't react. He simply continued his work. Cody, oblivious, kept building his wobbly house. Then Anya reached out a small, pale hand. Her fingers hovered in the air for a long moment before descending. They closed around a single, small, square maple block that lay just outside her fortress. She didn't do anything with it. She just pulled it inside her circle and held it. But it was enough. It was a beginning. A single, solid piece placed on an empty patch of ground. Kian glanced at Lorelei, who was still standing frozen in the doorway. Her hand was pressed against her mouth, her icy composure cracked, revealing the terrified, hopeful mother beneath. "That," Kian whispered, so low only she could hear, "is a result." He then turned back to his structure, giving the two children the gift of being unobserved, letting the fragile silence in the room hold. He knew better than anyone that the most important structures aren't built with noise and haste. They're built one quiet piece at a time. The sessions settled into a quiet rhythm. Twice a week, Kian and Cody would enter the silent, pristine world of the penthouse. The book fortress in Anya's room was gone, replaced by what Kian mentally called the workshop. The floor was now a landscape of wooden blocks, brass dowels, and intricate, half-finished structures. Anya still didn't speak, but her silence had changed. It was no longer a wall. It was a space she was slowly starting to share. She and Cody now built in parallel, sometimes just inches apart. Cody would construct loud, imaginative castles with moats and garages for his toy cars. Anya's creations were different. They were delicate, complex, and defied gravity in ways that made Kian's old carpenter's heart ache with a familiar mix of awe and sorrow. She understood tension, counterbalance, and symmetry on an instinctual level. Today, Kian sat back, content to just watch. He'd brought a thermos of hot chocolate, and the sweet, warm scent felt like a small, deliberate act of rebellion in the cool, sterile air of the apartment. He poured a small cup for Cody, who took it with a grin. Lorelei stood in the doorway, as always. But her arms weren't crossed anymore. She leaned against the frame, a notepad in her hand that Kian knew was just a prop, a shield. Anya was building a bridge. It was a soaring, impossible arc made of pencils and binder clips, spanning 2 towers of books. It was fragile, elegant, and perfectly balanced. "Where did you learn to do that?" Lorelei asked, her voice quiet, directed at Kian. He glanced at her, then back at the children. "My father was a cabinet maker. I grew up with the smell of sawdust in my lungs. It was all I ever wanted to do." "Was?" she probed gently. Kian took a slow sip from his own cup of hot chocolate, the warmth doing little to touch the cold spot her question grazed. "I had my own business for a while, custom furniture, built-ins, the kind of stuff people keep for a lifetime." "You were successful?" He allowed himself a small, sad smile. "We were happy." The "we" hung in the air. Lorelei didn't push, but her silence was an invitation. "My wife, Lena," Kian said, the name still feeling both sacred and raw on his tongue. "She was the artist. I was the craftsman. We were building our house, doing it all ourselves. I'd just finished framing the big picture window in the living room for her. She wanted to be able to see the sunset." He paused, his gaze distant. "She went out to get paint. There was a truck. It ran a red light." Lorelei's breath caught. The notepad in her hand suddenly felt heavy, useless. "Kian, I'm so sorry." He just nodded, his throat tight. "After that, The tools felt wrong in my hands. Every piece of wood felt like a coffin. The whole house was just a monument to everything I'd lost. I sold it, sold the business. I needed a job where I didn't have to create anything, just clean up after everyone else. They sat in that shared, heavy silence for a moment. It was the most he'd spoken about it in years. It was the most human Lorelei had felt in just as long. Suddenly, Anya's bridge collapsed. A single binder clip gave way, and the whole delicate structure cascaded to the floor with a soft clatter of pencils. Cody looked up. "Whoa! Big crash!" Anya froze, her hands hovering over the ruins. Keon watched her, his own grief momentarily forgotten. He saw the tremor in her hands, the familiar prelude to a retreat. He expected her to gather the pieces and withdraw, but Cody, in his infinite 7-year-old wisdom, did something unexpected. He pushed one of his sturdiest square blocks across the floor toward her. "Here," he said. "Use this one for the bottom. It's a good foundation." Anya stared at the block. Then she looked at Cody. Her eyes flickered to Keon, then back to the block. For a full 30 seconds, she didn't move. Then, she reached out, picked up the block Cody had offered, and placed it firmly on the carpet. She began to build again, starting with that one solid piece. Lorelei's hand went to her chest, a gesture that was becoming familiar. Later that evening, on the drive home, the city lights painting streaks across the car window, Cody was unusually quiet. "Everything okay, bud?" Keon asked, glancing at him in the rear-view mirror. Cody was staring out the window, his expression thoughtful. "Dad?" "Yeah? Is Anya's house bigger than our apartment?" Keon's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Yeah, buddy, it is. And she has more toys than me." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. "She does," Keon confirmed, his heart beginning to ache in a new way. There was another long pause. Then Cody's small voice, laced with a vulnerability that pierced Keon to the core. "Do you like building with her more than you like building Legos with me?" Keon pulled the car over to the curb, switching on the hazard lights. He turned around in his seat fully, his whole body angled toward his son. "Hey, look at me," he said gently. Cody turned, his bottom lip trembling slightly. "Cody, I love building Legos with you more than anything in the world. You and me, we're a team. Always. Right?" Cody nodded, a tear escaping and tracing a path down his cheek. "My job with Anya is different," Keon explained, choosing his words with immense care. "It's not about fun. It's about helping her find her words. You know how you use your voice to tell me things. She uses blocks. I'm just trying to help her mom understand her language. But you?" He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You're my best guy. Nothing and nobody ever changes that. Got it?" Cody wiped his eye with the back of his hand and gave a watery smile. "Got it?" "Good." Keon smiled back, relief washing over him. He started the car again, but the conversation lingered. He was so focused on building a bridge to Anya, he hadn't realized one of the foundations in his own life was starting to feel a little shaky. It was another problem to solve, another structure that needed his attention, his care, and his steady hands. The next morning, Lorelei walks through the atrium of Stratton Design, and for the first time, she sees the ghost of her daughter's chaotic tower. She doesn't feel the usual spike of shame or frustration. Instead, she feels a strange sense of something else. Pride. No, not yet, but the memory is no longer a wound. It's a landmark. "Rough night, Lorelei?" The voice is smooth, like polished chrome, and just as cold. Dashiell Croft leans against the reception desk, a tablet tucked under his arm. His suit is immaculate, his smile sharp and predatory. He's the firm's lead strategist, a man who designs takeovers with the same brutalist efficiency that Lorelei designs skyscrapers. "I sleep just fine, Dashiell," she replies, her voice cool, refusing to give him an inch. "Good to hear," he says, his eyes roaming the lobby. "Wouldn't want our queen to lose focus. There's blood in the water with the Omnicorp bid. They think you've gone soft." He's baiting her as always. A month ago, she would have eviscerated him with a few choice words about his own billable hours. Today, she just files the information away. Let them think what they want. We'll be fine. As long as you're not distracted, he says, letting the word hang in the air. He gives her another one of his razor blade smiles and saunters toward the elevators, leaving a chill in his wake. That evening, Kian decides to change the routine. When he unpacks the canvas bag in Anya's room, he doesn't start his own project. "All right, team," he says, looking between Cody and Anya. "Tonight, we're not building houses. We're building a city, a whole city. And you, Mr. Mayor," he says, ruffling Cody's hair, "are in charge of the Grand Central Station. It has to be the biggest, most amazing train station ever." Cody's face lights up. He's not a visitor in Anya's world tonight. He has a purpose. He immediately gets to work, gathering the largest blocks. Anya watches, her head tilted. She doesn't move. "And you," Kian says softly, turning to her, "are the chief engineer. Your job is the most important of all. You have to build all the bridges that connect the city together." He doesn't know if she understands the title, but he knows she understands the word bridges. He slides a pile of the longest, thinnest dowels and a box of binder clips toward her. For a while, they work in their separate zones. Cody hums as he builds his station, a sprawling, chaotic masterpiece. Anya begins her work with intense focus, creating a delicate, intricate web of bridges that connect imaginary islands on the carpet. Lorelei watches from the kitchen, where she's making tea. Real tea, in a pot. She finds herself drawn into the quiet industry of the scene. She sees Kian not directing, but guiding, creating a space where two lonely children can find a common language. Cody's station is getting ambitious. He tries to build a high roof over the main platform, but it keeps collapsing. "Dad, it won't work," he says, his voice edged with frustration. Before Kian can respond, Anya gets up. She walks over to Cody's station, her bare feet silent on the floor. She studies the collapsing roof for a long moment. Cody looks at her, half nervous, half curious. Anya then walks back to her own pile of materials, picks up two of the longest pencils, and returns. She wordlessly wedges them into Cody's structure, creating a perfect triangular truss that supports the roof. Cody gasps. "Whoa, it's strong now." He looks at Anya with pure, unadulterated admiration. "Thanks." Anya gives a single small nod and returns to her bridges. Lorelei feels her throat tighten. It was more than an interaction. It was a collaboration, an offering. She walks into the room holding 2 mugs of tea. She hands one to Kian. "I'm starting to think you're some kind of magician, Mr. Holloway." "Just a carpenter, Miss Stratton," he says, accepting the mug. Their fingers brush for a fraction of a second, a spark of warmth in the cool, quiet room. "And please, call me Kian." "Lorelei," she says softly. They watch the children work, the silence between them no longer a void, but a shared space. It feels dangerously comfortable. Later that night, Dashiell Croft is working late, poring over blueprints for the Omnicorp bid. He's restless. Lorelei's confidence irritated him. He feels power shifting in the firm, and he doesn't like it. He glances out the window of his corner office, which happens to look directly across the street at the main entrance of Lorelei's exclusive residential tower. His eyes narrow. He sees them. The janitor, Holloway, and his son. He recognizes them from the lobby. They're leaving Lorelei's building. Not the service entrance, the main entrance. Dashiell watches as Kian kneels to tie his son's shoe, a simple fatherly gesture that looks profoundly out of place against the backdrop of uniformed doormen and black cars. A slow, cold smile spreads across Dashiell's face. He's a man who understands structure too, and he knows a weakness when he sees one. He lifts his phone, the screen illuminating his predatory features. He zooms in, the lens finding Kian's face. The image is grainy, indistinct, but the implication is crystal clear. Snap. He captures the photo. He looks down at the image on his screen. The working-class father leaving the billionaire CEO's private residence late at night. It's a story waiting to be written. A lever waiting to be pulled. "Well, well, Lorelei," he whispers to the empty office. "What have you been building?" He leans back in his chair, the wheels of his mind turning. Designing not a skyscraper of steel and glass, but a far more delicate and destructive structure of rumor, scandal, and ruin. The article drops on a Tuesday morning. It's not in a major newspaper, but on a gossip-fueled industry blog called Blueprint, known for its anonymous sources and venomous takedowns. The headline is designed for maximum damage. Foundation flaws. Is Stratton Designs CEO on the verge of collapse? Beneath it is Dashiell's grainy photo. Keon, kneeling to tie Cody's shoe outside Lorelei's opulent building. The caption is pure poison. Sources say CEO Lorelei Stratton has engaged in a bizarre and troubling relationship with a member of her firm's janitorial staff, Keon Holloway, giving him unprecedented access to her troubled, nonverbal daughter. With the crucial Omnicorp bid hanging in the balance, board members are reportedly questioning Stratton's stability and judgment. By 9 a.m., Lorelei's phone is a screaming siren of notifications. Texts from board members, missed calls from her PR chief, an email from the chairman with the subject line, URGENT. She reads the article once, her blood running cold. She sees Dashiell's fingerprints all over it. Questioning Stratton's stability. It's his language, his strategy. He isn't just attacking her, he's trying to dismantle her, piece by piece, using her daughter as a wrecking ball. The old Lorelei would have already been on the phone with her lawyers, preparing to sue the blog into oblivion and fire Keon so fast his head would spin. The new Lorelei simply closes her laptop, takes a deep breath, and thinks of Anya building a bridge out of pencils. Keon finds out from Sal, the young security guard, in the gray, sterile break room at the end of his shift. Sal holds out his phone, his expression apologetic. "Man, I'm sorry. This is messed up. You're a good dude." Keon stares at the photo of himself and his son, twisted into something sordid and ugly. His first thought is a hot spike of anger. His second is a cold wave of fear. Not for himself, but for Cody. For Anya. He had built a small, safe space for that little girl, and now the whole world was trying to smash the windows in. He arrives at the penthouse that evening, and the air is thick with unspoken tension. Lorelei is waiting for him in the living area. She looks exhausted, but her eyes are clear, steady. "You saw it," she says. "It's not a question." He nods. "Lorelei, I'm so sorry you're being put through this." "It's not your fault," she says quickly. "It's Dashiell. This is a corporate hit job." She paces the length of the window. A caged lioness. "The board is in a panic. They want me to make a statement. They want me to terminate your contract." Keon's heart sinks, even though he expected it. "I understand. Maybe it's for the best." She stops pacing and turns to him. "Is it?" "They're using me to hurt you," he says, his voice heavy. "They're using Anya. If I'm gone, the story goes away. Dashiell loses his leverage." He looks her straight in the eye, the offer costing him more than she'll ever know. "Let me walk away, Lorelei. I'll disappear. We can say the arrangement wasn't working. It will protect her." Lorelei stares at him. He is offering her an exit. The clean, logical corporate solution. The old her would have seized it with both hands. She thinks of the silence in this apartment before he came. A dead, hollow silence. She thinks of the new silence, the quiet hum of concentration, the soft click of wood on wood, the sound of her daughter creating instead of hiding. "No," she says, the word sharp, final. Keon blinks. "What?" "I said no." She walks toward him, her exhaustion replaced by a sudden, fierce energy. "For my entire career, I have managed risk. I have cut losses. I have made the smart move. And where did it get me? An immaculate apartment I hate living in and a daughter I couldn't even speak to. You taught her a language I was too arrogant to learn. You are not a liability, Kian. You're the only thing that's worked. His breath catches in his throat. I won't let him win, she continues, her voice low and intense. I won't let them take this away from her, from us. The U.S. hangs in the air, a structure far more complex and fragile than anything the children had ever built. The decision is made, but the consequences are already filtering down. That night, after Kian tucks Cody into bed, his son calls him back into the room. Dad? Cody's voice is small in the dark. Yeah, bud. At school today, Michael showed me a picture on his mom's phone. It was you, and the tall building. Kian sits on the edge of the bed, his body going rigid. What did it say? I don't know, Cody whispers. Lots of words, but Michael said his mom said you were in trouble. Are you in trouble, Dad? Kian reaches out and smooths the hair back from his son's forehead. He struggles to find the right words, the right foundation for this conversation. No, I'm not in trouble, he says, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. Sometimes, when people don't understand something, they get scared. And when they get scared, they say things that aren't very nice. They don't understand what we're doing with Anya. They think it's strange. But we know it's not strange, don't we? We know it's just helping. So they're just being mean? Cody asks. Yeah, buddy, Kian says, his heart aching. They're just being mean. But we're not going to let them stop us from helping our friend, okay? Okay, Cody says, his voice a little stronger. He rolls over, reassured. Kian stays there for a long time, watching his son sleep. The war had come to his doorstep, to his son's schoolyard. He had told Lorelei he wouldn't let them win. Now, sitting in the dark, he feels the true weight of that promise. It wasn't just about a corporate takeover anymore. It was about protecting this small, innocent boy from a fight he should never have had to witness. Across the city, Lorelei picks up her phone. She scrolls past the dozens of panicked messages until she finds the one she's looking for. The private number of Marcus Thorne, the formidable, old guard chairman of her board. A man who respected strength above all else. She hits call. He answers on the second ring. Lorelei, I trust you have a plan. I do, Marcus, she says, her voice as solid as steel. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for Friday. To announce your resignation, I hope. It would be the cleanest way. A cold smile touches Lorelei's lips. No, Marcus, she says, to announce my new vision for the future of this company. Tell Dashiell to be ready. I'm coming for him. She hangs up the phone, the decisive click echoing in the silent penthouse. The battle lines were drawn. The 2 days leading up to the board meeting are a blur of tense energy. Lorelei moves through her penthouse not like a CEO, but like a general preparing for a siege. She's on the phone constantly, not with lawyers, but with engineers, department heads, and old mentors. She's not gathering ammunition to defend her past. She's sketching out a manifesto for her future. Kian keeps his promise. He and Cody arrive for their scheduled session the day before the meeting. The atmosphere in the penthouse is electric, but Kian works hard to keep their corner of it a sanctuary. Okay, team, he says, his voice calm and low. Today, a special project. We're not building a city, we're building one single thing. The most important building in the world, a place where everyone feels safe. Cody, still sensitive to the tension swirling around them, looks up at his dad. Like our apartment? Exactly like our apartment, Kian says, giving him a reassuring smile. Anya is already at work. She seems to be channeling the anxiety in the air into her creation. She isn't using the simple blocks or pencils today. She has scavenged materials from around the apartment, silver cutlery from a drawer, crystal coasters from the coffee table, even the delicate chains of one of Lorelei's necklaces she'd found discarded on a dresser. Lorelei enters the room, her face drawn and tight from a phone call. She opens her mouth to tell Anya not to play with her things, but the words die on her lips. The structure Anya is building is breathtaking. It's a geodesic dome, impossibly complex, made of interlocking forks and spoons. The crystal coasters serve as translucent windows, catching the light and fracturing it into 100 tiny rainbows on the carpet. The silver chains are woven throughout, not as decoration, but as suspension cables, holding the whole improbable, beautiful thing together. It's part cathedral, part spiderweb. It's fragile, yet incredibly strong. It's a perfect paradox. Kian gets down on his knees, his breath catching in his chest. He sees it instantly. The load distribution, the tensile strength of the chains, the way the light passes through it. It's not just a model. It's a concept. It's a philosophy of building made visible. "Lorelei," he says, his voice barely a whisper. "Look." She kneels beside him, her corporate war forgotten. She stares at her daughter's creation. "My God," she breathes. "This is the answer," Kian says, his mind racing. "This isn't a defense. It's a demonstration. This is what you've been learning. This is your new vision." That night, after the children are asleep, they sit in Lorelei's sterile kitchen, the dome sitting like a holy relic on the island between them. "I want to bring it to the meeting," Kian says. Lorelei recoils as if he'd suggested setting the building on fire. "Absolutely not. It's a slaughterhouse in there, Kian. They'll mock it. They'll tear you apart." "Let them," he says, his gaze unwavering. "They can't argue with this. It's pure genius. It's the story you can't tell in a spreadsheet." He leans forward. "And I want to bring her too." "No." The word is flat, absolute. "I will not put my daughter on display. I will not subject her to that kind of pressure, to Dashiell's cruelty." "It's not about putting her on display," Kian argues gently. "It's about showing them she's not the weakness they think she is. She's the source of all of this. She's your strength. Don't you see? You've been trying to protect her by hiding her, but maybe the way to protect her is to stand next to her and show the world how brilliant she is." He lets the words sink in. He's asking her to go against every protective instinct she has, against every rule of corporate warfare. He is asking her to have faith. She looks from Kian's earnest, steady face to the shimmering dome her daughter built. The daughter who was slowly, miraculously, finding her way back. She thinks about what it means to be strong. For years, she thought it meant being impenetrable, a fortress. But Kian, with his quiet carpenter's wisdom, had shown her that true strength was about connection, about building bridges. "Okay," she whispers, the decision feeling like stepping off a cliff. "We do it. Together." The next morning, the air is thick with a silent, nervous hum. Kian is helping Cody get his jacket on. He sees the worry in his son's eyes, a reflection of his own. He kneels down, taking both of Cody's hands in his. "Hey, big day today, huh?" Cody nods, looking at the floor. "Are you scared, Dad?" "Yeah," Kian admits honestly. "I am, a little. But you know what helps when I'm scared?" "What?" "I think about my foundation, the thing that holds me up and keeps me strong. And you know what my foundation is?" Cody looks up, his eyes wide. "You are," Kian says, his voice thick with emotion. "You and me. Our team. As long as I have you, I can handle anything. So today, when we go into that big, scary room, all I need you to do is hold my hand. Can you do that? Can you be my foundation today?" A slow, brave smile spreads across Cody's face. He puffs out his small chest. "Okay, Dad. I can be your foundation." Kian pulls him into a fierce hug, burying his face in his son's hair. This was it. This was everything. An hour later, the four of them stand before the elevators that will take them to the top floor, the Lion's Den. Lorelei is dressed in a simple dark blue dress, no armor, no power suit. She holds a large custom-made case that protects Anya's dome. Kian stands beside her, in a borrowed suit that feels like a costume. Anya is between them, holding a single smooth maple block in her hand. And holding Kian's other hand is Cody, his small fingers wrapped tight, ready to be the strongest foundation in the world. The elevator doors slide open with a soft chime. Ready? Lorelei asks, her voice quiet. Kian looks at her, then at the two children. Ready, he says. They step inside, and the doors slide shut, lifting them toward their future. The boardroom on the 50th floor is a cathedral of corporate power. A single, colossal slab of polished obsidian serves as the table, surrounded by severe leather chairs. The air is cold and smells faintly of money and air conditioning. 12 board members, a jury of stone-faced men and women in tailored suits, are already seated. At the head of the table, Dashiell Croft presides with the smug satisfaction of a predator who knows the trap has been sprung. He smirks when the door opens and the four of them walk in. The sight of Kian in his ill-fitting suit, a little boy clutching his hand, and the silent girl with a block in her own, sends a ripple of murmurs around the table. It's better than he could have hoped. It looks like a circus. Marcus Thorne, the chairman, sits at the opposite end, his face an unreadable mask of authority. Lorelei, he says, his voice gravelly. You asked for this meeting. The floor is yours, though I believe Mr. Croft has a motion to begin. Indeed, Dashiell says, standing up. He doesn't even look at Lorelei. He addresses the board. Members, we are here today because of a crisis in leadership. Stratton Design is at a pivotal moment, and our CEO, I'm afraid, has become a liability. He paces as he speaks, his voice smooth and practiced. Her judgment has become erratic. Her focus has shifted from shareholder value to unconventional personal projects. He gestures dismissively toward Kian. She has compromised this firm by allowing an unqualified, unvetted janitorial employee into her home, into her life, and into the life of her vulnerable child, leading to a PR nightmare that has already damaged our stock price. He lets that sink in. I have here sworn affidavits from 3 top-level executives expressing their grave concerns over her stability. This is not a personal attack. It is a necessary intervention to protect the foundation of this company. He sits down, the picture of calm, rational control. Therefore, I move for a vote of no confidence and for the immediate removal of Lorelei Stratton as CEO. Silence. Everyone looks at Lorelei, expecting her to crumble. She stands. She doesn't look at Dashiell. She looks at the faces around the table, men and women she has known for years. He's right, she says, her voice clear and steady. The board members blink, stunned. Dashiell's smirk widens. He's right that my focus has shifted. For years, my focus was on building things that were tall, powerful, and impenetrable. I realize now I was just building monuments to my own fear. I built walls, and in doing so, I walled off the most important person in my life. Her gaze flickers to Anya. My daughter doesn't speak with words. She speaks a different language, a language of structure, balance, and connection. I was too busy, too arrogant, and too afraid to learn it. I saw her genius as a disorder. I saw her brilliance as a problem to be managed. She gestures to Kian. This man, Kian Holloway, didn't try to manage her. He listened. He taught me how to listen. And in doing so, he reminded me what the foundation of this company, what the foundation of anything that lasts, is really about. She walks to the head of the table and places the large case on the obsidian surface. With a soft click, she opens it. She lifts out Anya's geodesic dome and places it in the center of the table. It glimmers under the recessed lighting, a fragile, impossible star of silver and crystal. The board stares at it, bewildered. Dashiell lets out a short, derisive laugh. My God, she's really lost it. What is this? Show and tell. This, Lorelei says, her voice ringing with newfound authority, is the future of Stratton Design. She looks at Kian. Mr. Holloway is a former master carpenter. He will explain. Kian steps forward. All eyes turn to him. He isn't nervous. He's in his element. He's talking about how things are built. This isn't a toy, he begins, his voice calm and sure. This is a perfect demonstration of tensegrity. Structural integrity derived from tension, not compression. His hands gesture toward the dome, tracing the lines of force. Look at how the suspension chains distribute the load. Not a single piece is bearing the full weight. Every part supports every other part. It's strong, not because it's rigid, but because it's interconnected. It's adaptable. It finds strength in its flexibility. He looks up, meeting the eyes of a board member who was once a celebrated engineer. You could scale this design up 1,000 times, and the principles would hold. It's a blueprint for building lighter, stronger, more resilient structures. It's a more humane way to build. It's what she's been trying to show you. This is absurd, Daschle sputters, seeing he's losing control. We are a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and you are listening to a janitor analyze an arts and crafts project. This is not a boardroom. It's a therapy session. He glares at Anya. And you've let your broken child dictate the future of this company. The word hangs in the air. Broken. Anya, who has been watching everything with a quiet intensity, does not flinch. She lets go of Cody's hand, walks steadily to the head of the table, and places her own small hand on the base of her shimmering dome. She looks past Daschle, her gaze locking with her mother's, and then she speaks. Her voice is not a whisper. It is clear, confident, and it fills the silent room. Foundation. The single word is a thunderclap. It's an answer, a statement, a verdict. Daschle stares, his mouth agape. The board members look from the dome to the small girl to her mother, and for the first time, they understand. They don't see a liability. They see a legacy. They see a story of redemption and innovation so powerful, it couldn't have been scripted. Marcus Thorne, the chairman, leans forward, a slow, genuine smile spreading across his face. He looks at Daschle, his eyes cold as ice. Mr. Croft, he says, his voice a low growl. Your motion is denied. I suggest you tender your resignation, effective immediately. The color drains from Daschle's face. He has been utterly, completely dismantled. Marcus turns his gaze to Lorelei, and it is filled with a profound, newfound respect. Ms. Stratton, he says, I believe you have a new vision to present to us. We're listening. Lorelei looks at Kian, who gives her a small, proud nod. She looks at her daughter, her brave, brilliant daughter, who has just saved them all. A tear escapes and rolls down her cheek, but it is not a tear of sadness. It is a tear of pure, unadulterated love. She takes Anya's hand, and Kian takes Cody's, and for a moment, they are just four people standing together, a small, unshakable structure in the heart of a fallen empire. 6 months later, the ground floor of the Stratton Design Building is a symphony of controlled chaos, and for the first time in its history, it feels alive. Kian stands with Lorelei in the center of the room just moments before the doors are set to open for the official launch. The air smells of fresh paint, wood stain, and the faint, clean scent of industrial-grade coffee brewing for the parents. Sunlight streams through the impossibly tall windows, illuminating millions of dust motes dancing in the air. No longer a sign of uncleanliness, but of life, energy, and impending creation. A beautiful, hand-carved wooden sign hangs above the entrance, crafted by Kian himself in a small workshop he'd finally built in his garage, a space that once held only painful memories, but now felt like a sanctuary. The Anya Stratton Initiative. Below it, a smaller plaque reads, Where every blueprint is a masterpiece. Nervous? Lorelei asks. She's smoothing the front of her simple, elegant navy dress. A nervous habit she hasn't quite shed. There is an ease to her now, a softness in her posture that has replaced the rigid steel of her past. But the woman who conquered boardrooms still feels the flutter of opening night. A little, Kian admits, his gaze sweeping over the room. He looks at the spot where Anya's chaotic tower of office supplies once stood. Now, in its place, is a low round table with a sunken center filled with smooth, cool clay. It feels important. more important than any custom furniture I ever built. He thinks of his wife, Lena, just for a second, a familiar, gentle ache. She would have loved this. The noise, the mess, the purpose. He looks at Lorelei. You? Terrified, she says with a genuine laugh that makes the lines around her eyes crinkle. I've launched billion-dollar projects with less anxiety. I've faced down hostile takeovers with a steadier pulse. This feels different. It feels like it matters. She runs a hand along the smooth, sanded edge of one of the tables he built. I remember standing right here, wanting to scream because my daughter had built a fortress of binders I couldn't get through. I thought she was breaking everything. She wasn't breaking, Kian says softly. She was building, just waiting for the right materials. The glass doors slide open, and the quiet is instantly washed away by a wave of shuffling feet and the excited, high-pitched chatter of children. They pour in, dragging their parents, their initial shyness dissolving as they see the wonders within, the building stations, the troughs of kinetic sand, the wall of magnets, the buckets of colorful, oversized blocks. There are no instructions, no expectations, just a universe of possibility. Kian spots a father standing hesitantly near the door, a carbon copy of the corporate warriors upstairs. He holds his son's hand in a death grip, his expression a tight mask of skepticism and desperation that Kian recognizes with a pang of memory. The boy, small for his age, is hiding behind his father's leg, peering out at the joyful noise with wide, anxious eyes. Kian makes his way through the crowd. "Welcome," he says warmly. "Glad you could make it. I'm Kian, the director here." "Frank," the man says, his handshake firm but tense. "This is my son, Noah, his therapist. Well, she insisted we try this, said it might be good for him." The way he says it is laced with years of frustration and doubt. "Noah likes to figure things out," Kian says, not asking but stating, his eyes on the boy. "I can tell. He's got engineer's eyes. He's looking at the joints on that table over there, trying to see how it holds together." Noah peeks out, his eyes wide with surprise at being so accurately seen. "He mostly just breaks things," Frank mutters, the familiar complaint of a parent at their wits' end. "We can't have Lego sets in the house. He gets too intense. He follows the instructions perfectly, and if one piece is missing or doesn't fit, he has a complete meltdown. The whole thing gets thrown against the wall." "It's not about the breaking," Kian says gently, kneeling to be closer to Noah's level. "It's about the system failing. He's not being destructive. He's protesting a flawed design. He's a quality assurance expert." He smiles at Noah. "Hey, Noah, we have a station over here with magnetic blocks. There are no instructions. You can't do it wrong. You can build as high as you want, and if it falls, it doesn't break. It just makes a cool sound. Want to check it out?" Noah's curiosity finally wins over his anxiety. He lets go of his father's leg and walks, almost in a trance, toward the magnetic building station Kian indicated. Frank watches him go, his mouth slightly agape. A little while later, Kian sees Frank standing by the wall, just watching. Noah is completely absorbed. He has built a tall, intricate spire and is humming to himself, a low, concentrated sound. Anya, sensing a kindred spirit, has migrated over to his table. She doesn't speak, but she picks up a long magnetic rod and, with the precision of a surgeon, adds it to Noah's tower, creating a buttress that allows him to build even higher. Noah looks at her, and a silent, perfect understanding passes between them. He smiles. Frank approaches Kian, his entire demeanor changed. The tension is gone, replaced by a raw, fragile awe. I've never seen him like that, he says, his voice thick. He's not frustrated. He's just creating. He's working with someone else. He doesn't do that. He looks at Kian, his eyes shining. You called him an engineer. Because he is, Kian says with a kind smile. He just needed the right materials and a place where it's safe to fail. At the height of the event, Lorelei steps onto a small, low platform. A gentle hush falls over the room. "Hi, everyone," she begins, her voice warm, carrying without the need for a microphone. "Welcome. A year ago, if you'd told me I'd be standing here, covered in what I sincerely hope is clay, I would have had you escorted out of the building." A ripple of laughter goes through the parents. For a long time, I believed that strength meant being the loudest voice in the room, having the most rigid plan. I thought success was a fortress you build around yourself. Her eyes find Anya. But I've learned that true strength, true genius, often comes from the quietest places. It comes from the child who sees a bridge in a pile of pencils or a cathedral in a stack of spoons. My daughter Anya never lost her voice. I just lost the ability to hear it. She was speaking a language of structure, balance, and beauty, and I was listening for a language of compliance. She turns her gaze to Kian, who stands near the back, watching her with pride. This initiative exists because a kind man, a carpenter, sat on the floor and reminded me that you can't command a foundation to be strong. You have to build it, piece by piece. He taught me to listen. This place is named for my daughter, but its spirit comes from him. The applause is genuine and sustained. Later, Marcus Thorne, the chairman, finds Kian refilling a bin of chalk. "That was quite a speech," he says. "You've done a remarkable thing here, son. You've changed the way we think about assets, Lorelei especially. We used to just look at the numbers. Now we're looking at the people." He shakes his head in admiration. "By the way, I thought you might like to know. Dashiell Croft's new consulting firm folded. He tried to build it on threats and intimidation. Seems no one was interested in hiring a man who sees children as liabilities." He pats Kian on the shoulder. "Character is a foundation too. His was rotten to the core." That evening, the four of them are in the penthouse. The air, once sterile and silent, is now rich with the smell of pepperoni pizza and the lingering scent of sugar cookies Cody had decorated. A stray sock peeks out from under the designer sofa. A tower made of pizza boxes stands precariously in the middle of the expensive rug. It is finally, wonderfully, a home. "I got an A on my science project," Cody announces proudly. "It was about bridge stability. Anya helped me with the design. She said my first one had too much compression and not enough tension." Anya beams, taking a tiny, regal bow. Lorelei laughs, leaning back against the sofa. "I had my head of design in my office today. He brought me the plans for a new city library. They were adequate, a glass box. I told him to go spend an afternoon down at the initiative and come back to me. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind." "And?" Kian prompts. He came back 3 hours later, his tie loosened, with a smear of paint on his cheek. He'd thrown out the blueprints. He was sketching on a napkin. His new design had curves. It had light. It had little nooks where children could hide away and read. He was excited for the first time in years. She looks at Kian. "It's a messier way to run a company." "It's a better way," he says. He looks at his own hands. "For years after Lena died, my hands just felt like tools for fixing things that were broken, my own life included. Here," he says, gesturing to the happy chaos around them, "they feel like they're for building again." The pizza box tower wobbles. Cody and Anya both lunge for it, trying to steady it. Their hands knock, and the whole thing comes crashing down in a heap of cardboard. For a beat, there's silence. Then, Anya lets out a giggle. Cody starts laughing too. Soon, they are both rolling on the rug, overcome with the sheer joy of the collapse. Lorelei watches them, her heart so full she feels it might burst. She looks at Kian, and her expression is one of utter, unguarded love. "When this all started," she says quietly, her voice for him alone, "I thought you were a complication I could manage and then discard. I was so arrogant." "And now?" he asks, his voice just as soft. "Now I know you weren't a complication," she whispers, her hand finding his, their fingers lacing together naturally, perfectly. "You were the architect of all of this." Later, after the mess is cleared away and the children are getting sleepy. Anya pads over to the large window overlooking the glittering city. She presses her hand against the glass. "So many lights," she says. The other three join her, a small huddle looking out at the vastness below, their reflections faint ghosts on the glass. "Tomorrow," Anya says, her voice filled with a quiet, certain hope. "Let's build that." She points to the tallest skyscraper on the horizon, its spire piercing the night sky. Kian and Lorelei look at each other over the children's heads, a shared silent understanding passing between them. "Okay, Chief Engineer," Kian says, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We'll build that, and then we'll build a bigger one," Cody adds, his voice thick with sleep but full of spirit. Lorelei wraps her arms around both children, pulling them close. She rests her head on Kian's shoulder, a simple, profound gesture of belonging. She had spent a lifetime chasing power and building an empire of glass and steel. But true wealth, she now knew, was this: the solid weight of a child leaning against you, the warmth of a hand holding yours in the dark, the quiet promise of building a new day together. She looked from her daughter's brilliant eyes to her son's joyful smile, and finally to the kind, steady face of the man who had walked into her life and reminded her how to build something true. He hadn't just saved her daughter. He hadn't just saved her. He had shown them they were never broken in the first place. They just needed a better blueprint. If this story resonated with you, if it made you believe in the power of listening and the strength found in kindness, let us know in the comments below. Where are you watching from today? We love seeing how far these stories travel, so drop your city or your country. It truly makes our day. Every share, every subscription helps us continue to create stories that connect us all. If you know someone who needs a reminder that everyone has a unique genius waiting to be seen, please share this with them. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story that aims to leave the world a little brighter than it was before. Thank you for being here with us. Until next time, be kind, be patient, and keep building bridges.